Thanks for your report. So I think the one thing I wanted to discuss this week, as I mentioned, like the two foreign secretaries and the two secretaries of state, I think, met in Ukraine this week in Kyiv, and the two leaders met this week of both the UK and the US. And so basically, we've gotten so many bizarre, contradictory statements. Here's like my general understanding, okay? At the beginning of the week, as far as we understood, the US has always been squirrely about this. Like, people who ask them questions in Washington, like the Washington reporters, when they ask them to clarify this matter, you always get some weird answer that's never like no or yes. It's always something kind of strange. But our understanding of the matter, based on like triangulating all the different answers they've given over the last like year, was that like long range strikes in Ukraine are prohibited by the US government. And as a result, like they're leaning on other partners like the UK as well to restrict that. The one country that like doesn't care is France. They've just handed Ukraine the keys and said, go nuts. And that was their position up until recently. Now there's sort of discussion that there's been movement on the issue. I don't think that anything specific has been said, but there's a discussion that there's been like movement on the issue. There was also an unofficial report that like basically there's been a decision made that sort of allows them to do this in some capacity, but that it won't be announced. There's also been a sort of denial by both governments, I think, the UK and the US, that there's been any real change in the policy. They basically have said every possible change has happened and every possible change hasn't happened. So I'm pretty confused about it. And I was curious, maybe we'll go to Erlend first and then germinate to Ukraine. Like, what is your guys' understanding of the current policy? And like, did the policy change this week? That would be my question. Go ahead, Erlend.
Well, we got a message from the president, Biden, that they're working on it. And my interpretation is that there's a policy change. But then there's also this caveat where obviously the US is very concerned about Ukraine striking long-range targets. They say it's because of escalation management. I think there might be some other things into this as well, but let's say it's because of escalation fear. So fear that Russia feels too threatened about its own national security, so that they will have to resort to stronger means. And in this case, I mean, Russia is all in on Ukraine with conventional weapons. The only thing they are not doing basically is because they actually already struck a civilian ship. So they did that now as well in transit. Of course, they could be escalating that and start sinking civilian ships transiting to Odessa. But the big scare is, of course, the use of weapons of mass destruction, whether it being chemical, but mainly the fear of nuclear weapons being used. Another escalation could also be that Russia is directly taking action against targets in the West, maybe infrastructure, maybe infrastructure related to transfer of weapons, etc. So maybe airports, train lines going into Ukraine, etc. I think the US wants to somehow put some restriction on this long-range use. So let's say they allow striking airfields, but they don't allow striking critical infrastructure that has to do with the Russian nuclear capacity. For instance, this could be one of the things that they want to prevent Ukraine from doing. The problem is when the US directly involves itself in the targeting, so basically approving or not approving a target, then there is another issue, which is that the argument that we are not a direct, like the West isn't a direct part of the war, is kind of violated. Because if you in the command structure have not only supplying information, so intelligence and weapons, but you're actually a part of the decision making chain, then Russia has actually some arguments for us being directly involved with the war, so NATO. I think they want to try and find a structure or a policy that can avoid basically any involvement, direct involvement, and also satisfy the needs of the really scared ass people that think Russia is gonna nuke everyone if we kill too many of their airports. That's my point of view. That's what I think. I think when Biden messages that clearly, and we have Blinken in Ukraine, etc. I think the US has decided, but yeah. Another thing is also having this uncertainty is a part of escalation management in itself, or actually an escalating factor. So Russia right now might not know if Ukraine is allowed to strike, which means they might be more careful about parking their airplanes in all these airports there. And by the way, this is a ISW map. Actually, this map is very good because it illustrates very well what some US officials have been lying about to the press repeatedly over and over again. Kirby, the spokesperson, and what's the female spokesperson again in Pentagon's name? What's her name again?
I don't know her
Yeah,
name.
of course. Both of you don't know her name.
I'm so sorry.
Just
I'm
because she's female.
No. Oh my god.
Just kidding.
Hey, don't me too me here online. Anyways,
Sabrina's saying
yes, Sabrina. She and Kirby has been lying to the press over and over again, saying that there is nothing that can be hit with these attackers. So ISW put this map out, and I think that's very good that the ISW did that.
Yeah, I think there was some comment by the Ukrainian Air Force that like 90% of the planes have been moved like out of ATACMS range. But I mean, that's just planes. That's, and it doesn't, there's still 10% of the planes. And I don't know, that doesn't mean there's no targets, right? I think that's like a huge leap to make from Russia has relocated 90% of their planes for now to there's no targets.
There's also like air defense targets. Right. Ukraine has been hitting a lot of S-300 and S-400 facilities in occupied Ukraine, and also some in the Kursk area, etc. But they've not been able to hit S-300 and S-400 systems that have been situated just on the border outside occupied Ukraine because they're in Russia. But they cover extensively into also Ukrainian-held territory, which means they are not able to fly their jets along the front lines. Imagine the difference if you can hit all those air defense targets. Imagine the difference in the airspace for Ukraine. It's huge. So they're lying their teeth out, and I don't know why they have been told to lie about this specific thing, because it's so easy to just debunk. But yeah. By the way, buonasera, Daniele. We're talking about this kind of weird messaging from the UK and the US about permission of the long-range strikes.
So yeah, I think you did a good job explaining like your take, Erlend. More Germany to Ukraine. Like, do you have a different take or different thoughts on it? Did you like kind of see the same situation we saw, or did you see it differently? Go ahead.
Well, I think Erlend explained most of it already, so I don't need to add so much to it. Just for the part where he spoke about the like not getting too involved too much. I don't know if people can relate that here. I believe every German can 100%, because it really, really, really reminds me of the debate we had here in Germany for over a year regarding Taurus, because there was a question which was asked and answered on a daily basis for many, many months. Because Scholz, if all of you remember, wanted to control how Ukraine uses these cruise missile, or at least it was a discussion and stuff about it. I mean, he even went, or the chancellor even went to the manufacturer and asked like how they could prevent Ukraine from striking certain targets, limiting the range, geofencing, blah blah blah, all these kind of stuff. So they actually were plans to deliver Taurus to Ukraine. The manufacturer just couldn't rule out that the Ukrainians were removing the restrictions on their own. I mean, we're talking about the Ukrainians, right? Like when somebody can do it, probably the Ukrainians. And it just reminds me of the whole Taurus debate where we are like saying, okay, they need to do this or they need to do this, and then Germany is not involved too much. And when I recall correctly, it was like for the target controlling, you would need to not send military personnel or personnel of the government itself, but personnel of the manufacturer, which is of course qualified in, on a technical level, that they actually can control certain things like target programming and stuff like this. And since it's a private company and not government owned, or there are no soldiers from a different country involved in the target programming and all this kind of stuff, everything is fine. But of course, this also involves a certain trust from a government to a private company from that country. But this was, when I recall correctly, the German way of doing it, that they would basically send either personnel from MBDA or from Taurus Systems to Ukraine for them to watch over which kind of targets they're hitting. Of course, this would still remain the question when the Ukrainians actually want to target a specific person, regardless of what the private company says. How would they prevent Ukrainian military from actually doing so? So let's say the US is saying, hey, don't strike air defense sites. You're just allowed to target airfields. And then the Ukrainians actually want to program a missile to strike an air defense site like an S-400 battery or whatever. How should the private company actually prevent the Ukrainian soldiers from doing so, right? Besides saying do, or, so that's another question. But there are like possible scenarios where they could do it. And in my opinion, they just need to ask the Germans, because we have planned everything through.
Yeah, it seems like we're talking mostly about the political kind of decisions. As far as like the technical decision in terms of like, could Ukraine launch the missile in terms of like mission planning and all that without foreign assistance? My understanding, based on like John and Fabian talking mostly, is that like there are ways that we could give Ukraine the missile and just hand him the keys and just walk away. It wouldn't be optimal. Like, in other words, it would be better if we got more involved in the mission planning, because that would probably mean a better result. But we could do that. Do you guys have any comment on that? We'll try. I don't want to really say more than that. I just know Fabian made a post to the effect of like, we don't need to be part of the mission planning process for technical reasons, right? Do you guys have any comment on the technical side or no? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to quickly point it out, because I was also asked during the whole Taurus debate, because the Bundeswehr said they have some special equipment which needs to be involved and stuff like this, which is of course a bullshit. I mean, we have delivered Taurus to Spain. We have delivered them to South Korea. Do you really want to tell me that South Korea needs permission and specific technical stuff which only the Bundeswehr has from Germany? So we are sending equipment and Bundeswehr soldiers to South Korea for them programming targets within North Korea. This is of course bullshit. So yeah, just from my perspective, we already had this discussion. They don't need us.
Yeah, I agree. I think like John and Fabian are pretty straightforward and correct on this. Do you have anything else to say about like the technological capacity to do the targeting, Erlend? Like why the Western countries need to be more involved?
Well, when it comes to ATACMS, I think it's bullshit to the highest degree of that you can find. It's just people lying again, finding excuses. But when it comes to Taurus and Scout PG Storm Shadow, there is some technical things that has to do with updated imagery and ground level radar data that could be something they need from the US, but in the end, I don't think so. I think France that really found a way to be self-sufficient on that, like they are with everything else in their military capacity. So I'm sure that if the French figured it out, there's a way to just transfer that capacity, and the Ukrainians will be able to do what they need with it. Maybe there will be some limitations. I'm not a missile expert. Probably Daniele has a lot better insight into this.
Yeah, you refer to mission planning of the Storm Shadow.
Yeah, well, there's been excuses made both. I think they're talking about the Storm Shadow, but they kind of make it sound like it also is valid for ATACMS. As far as I
But,
know,
I mean,
for ATACMS, it's mainly coordinate based. It's a ballistic
because
missile.
it's a ballistic missile. There is no cruise phase. I mean, there is a boost phase and then a ballistic phase. So once you know the coordinates, that there is nothing else. For ATACMS, it's much easier. And as you said, for Storm Shadow, there are some more input to be in place, but the system was anyway developed not as in collaboration with US. So all the type of information somehow France, Italy, and UK are able to gather these by themselves. So I don't see why there is a need of US data. Of course, more data, and if the quality of the data that you input is better, of course, the outcome could be of a much better outcome. But I mean, it's not something that is required, that you have to knock to the door of the White House and ask for permission. It's completely, honestly, on this situation, I'm very, very upset, because I don't see why a weapon system that has been designed and built in Europe needs the approval of US. There is no reason whatsoever. Is a weapon system paid by taxpayer in Europe, so should be available at the disposal of the Ukrainian if the French and the British are happy with that. I exclude Italy because the contribution to attack, on Storm Shadow is minimal and laughable, whatever the Minister of Defense of Italy, Crosetto, says. So I just read an article from the previous Minister of Defense of UK, and he signed a letter with the other MPs to ask the current government, the UK government, to go ahead whatsoever without waiting for the US. So taking the lead, as was for the tank. And I think this should be the way. UK, at least UK, should give the go ahead without any reservation. And then probably this will break the ice, because at some point the other will follow somehow.
Yeah, so I just want to say, like, I don't think anyone. I'd rather have like John or Fabian. Maybe we'll get Fabian on one day, or if John's super busy because of school. But if we can get John or Fabian on to talk a little bit more technically about how missiles and targeting missions work and all that, and like the technical stuff behind like how much involvement would have to be had. If people are interested in that, we'll try to get them on to talk about it. But I think like our broad understanding is good enough to say the issues here are like political. I think Erlend's right to say they're trying to figure out where the political line is that would allow them to plausibly say, we're just giving Ukraine the weapons and we're not involved directly. Because if we are involved directly, I would agree with Erlend that like there's a case to be made that we're basically in hostilities with Russia at that point. If we have like people in our military structures making decisions about like, let's kill those Russian troops right there, that is, some kind of thing that's going on. And it would be better to leave the decision to Ukraine, in my opinion. So hopefully they're going to find an acceptable line and stake out a policy. I mean, is that where we leave it, Erlend?
Well, I think it's going to be really difficult, and in the end, it's probably going to result in Ukraine being the decision maker at the ultimate level, anyways. I just want to clarify something. I didn't mean that if even France figured it out. I mean, I think Ukraine is going to figure it out because they will be provided with the data they need, because France has managed, like with all their other weapon systems, to be completely ITAR free on this system, which means that they have the main source of the data input they need, and they can gather that from their sensors, and they're totally independent from the use of, for instance, US satellites, where there's been a discussion about that the Storm Shadow might be that the British might be inputting data that they basically acquire from the US because they have more satellites with better sensors. So I hope I clarified that for the people that misunderstood, or I maybe misspoke. Daniele.
No, yeah, I have one point. One essentially was the UK very recently have started his own spy satellite campaign. So on I think it was August, mid-August, one of the first military all UK spy satellite was sent, was a ISR spy satellite. So I think all these things, of course, that do not come only due to this, but I think has been boosted by the realization that you can trust your allies until to a certain degree, and so many countries, I think, will start to think about more a collective, even in Europe, a collective way to gather information from space and other and also by other means. Europe has a very large space capability, so they can very easily build a fleet of spy satellites. But the other point is that I would disagree with one point about I don't think we should care at this point to be involved in direct confrontation with Russia, because are we not? I mean, they consider us as a threat, and they treat us as a threat using whatever method they can, except the kinetic, because they know that at this point they can't do much, but they are doing their best to destabilize and to create problems, even serious problem, in all the countries in Europe and also US. And I take this as a very serious matter, because the democracies are strong but also very fragile, and they know this, and they are doing their best to disassemble them. And this is a very large, aggressive movement from a country that we are trying to deter without doing anything. I mean, without doing anything up to a certain limit. But I think all the red lines, which of course these podcasts today also talk about, have been passed, and has been demonstrated that this threat of the nuclear response is completely useless, also on a tactical point of view. So I don't see why we shouldn't do more bold action in order to ensure that the Kremlin and Putin and all the oligarchs around him understand that there is no turn back to what was before, because every politician try to say, oh, but if we do too much, maybe we break some relationship. The relationships are already broken. There is nothing to build apart a wall or like a demilitarized zone between us and Russia. And I don't understand all these cautious approach, because this is not prior the invasion. No, it's not prior Crimea. It's after more than 10 years of constant asymmetrical warfare. So I think I'm quite sick about talking about, oh, we should not get involved directly. We are not maybe with the troop there, but we are, because they are jamming GPS signal all around the north part of Europe, the North Sea. They are doing this also in the Black Sea, creating also further other issues. They are destabilizing all democracies with disinformation. in Europe and in US. I mean, what they have to do else? They're not going to march on our capital now, because of course they don't have the capability now. But what we are waiting? I don't know. Sorry.
I must admit, it is a truly based position. I'm a bit more cautious than you, I think, but I mean, I can't deny that what you're saying is courageous. And I want to agree with it. I'll put it that way. But I also wanted to mention this week, Erlend, if I remember, it was this week. The Nordic countries had that conference, or that televised thing. Was that this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to talk about that very briefly? Like, basically,
Sure.
here's my understanding for the non-Nordics, right? The Nordic countries, because they're so coordinated on the Ukraine issue, or because there's so much to talk about, they just said, why don't we have all of our foreign ministers get together and we'll televise it? And they all just kind of got together and had like a televised discussion of what's going on. Would you say that's an accurate summary? Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So need to be explained that there is so most Scandinavians, Swedish, Norwegians, and Danes can understand each other speaking the respective language, at least to some degree. For me, it's not a problem to understand Danish or Swedish at all. It might be from some other Norwegian, but most have a basic understanding of the other languages. So that facilitates these kind of things. And on top of that, in Finland, Swedish is the second language. So you need to take Swedish in school. In some areas of Finland, they speak Swedish as a first language as well. So they basically sent their minister, which is best in Swedish, I think, on this thing. But yeah, they had foreign minister of Norway, Denmark, the defense minister of Sweden, and a foreign minister of Finland, I think, in this debate in Copenhagen. And it was just like any other televised debate. It's just a little bit weird because you normally don't have politicians from other different countries debating each other in any way or form, because you have the problem of diplomacy on top of that. So they were a little bit careful about each other countries, but they had some journalists and defense analysts, etc., in the mix in the debate, which it kind of sprited up the thing a little bit. Like you had the Swedish journalist, I think, basically saying like, hey, Norway, you have all this oil money, but look at Denmark and Sweden, how much money they are giving to Ukraine, and you earn enormous amount of money because of the war. So what's happening with the support? Why are you not increasing it? So it was pretty good. I would say that Espen Barth Eide, which is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway, was pretty bold in the signaling that Norway will increase the support, but he didn't say, of course, to what amount, because there is going to be a meeting this week at Parliament between all the big parties, or all the parties in Parliament, about the Nansen program, which is the 5-year support program for Ukraine. Hopefully, it's going to be increased by a lot. I don't think doubling it is going to be enough, to be honest. But I think we're going to see an increase, probably less than what we hope, but hopefully it's going to be a very substantial increase, and also will change some of the policies or customs that they had when it comes to allocating money, because we're mainly paid for defense products from Norwegian companies, while we can see Denmark putting money into producing artillery systems in Ukraine, and it's obviously paid off, as they already delivered just 2 months after the announcement. So yeah, I really hope that we're going to see some big changes from Norway. On the other hand, it was also very interesting to see the Danish foreign minister being very ballsy about Scandinavia, or the Nordic countries as a whole, and how actually big they are if they put them together and act together. So
Was this the Danes' idea? Is that clear? Like whose idea it was? Because it's very smart. Whoever, if it was their idea.
I don't know who had the idea.
We're
Probably
a very
the tel-
small country. Welcome to Copenhagen. Now, please let me share with you my very passionate beliefs about what we need to do with Russia.
Yeah, they were also kind of ballsy. Like he was also kind of ballsy about the U.S. and basically blaming a lot of the drip feeding. He said directly about U.S. aid to Ukraine, and also I think mentioned that Europe has delivered a lot more aid to Ukraine than the U.S. So we're paying up for our past kind of mistakes. Was kind of some of the messaging, referencing the fact that we underfunded our military for many years. So he was very proactive in his messaging as well. I think it was interesting, and the good thing about it is that I think it's going to increase the demand, the public demand on delivering aid as quick as possible. Yeah. So it was cool. I hope we're going to see it again.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It seems like a really positive step towards coordinating the Nordic countries towards like a more unified and bold Ukraine policy. So yeah, good news all around. I saw you pulled up some mappies there, Erlend. Did you have anything you wanted to say about that before we wrap up?
Yeah, so this is from Andrew's map, Ukraine Daily Update. So I have this limited functionality. I can go and extract data from more than one day. If you're an end user, you can only see one day at a time, but I wanted to share this. So this is from 1st of January, only this year, missile strikes and airstrikes. I think some of the data is falling out because I think there should be more missile attacks. I probably need to change the search query, but just look at the amount of airstrikes. It's absolutely insane.
And this is January.
From January until today.
Oh, from January to today. Got it.
Yeah. And then we have politicians in the West fearing escalation if Ukraine is allowed to do something about this. And I just thought it can illustrate the absolute ridiculous notion that is, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's absurd. I mean, we've seen this with pretty much every issue. I think probably the best parallel example here is the Kharkiv stuff, right? It was like for what, 6 months or 8 months, the Russian military was shelling Kharkiv. We weren't allowing Ukraine to shell back. Russia was killing civilians all the time. It was like a terrible situation in Kharkiv. Finally, we said, let them shell back. And I'm not going to say that it's been quiet ever since, but like the situation's improved immensely since that happened for Kharkiv, right? So like, I don't know. It's just, it seems pretty obvious that this will definitely save Ukrainian lives and it will help improve their situation. And like all these other things, it's frustrating to watch us have to go through the motions like this every time and go, I don't know, escalation, this, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, even though I want to see it done like responsibly, I obviously like I want to see movement on it, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think if unless our panel has anything else, Erlend, do you have anything else, other topics or anything?
Well, I thought maybe we can look a little bit on the Kursk map as well.
Sure.
One sec.
I stay away from the frontline stuff because I don't
I
know.
need to open the map again.
I leave that to Andrew. You can always check out
So,
Andrew
as
with
people
map.
may know, Ukraine did well. There's been a little bit of a setback for Ukraine in Kursk. Oh no. Oh, there, I got it. Sorry. So basically, I think it was on Monday we got the message that Russia had a successful attack towards Snagost, which had been in firm Ukrainian control for weeks. And this area was very important when Ukraine took it, because it immediately put Koronevo in a very difficult situation, because they could push up to this. It's also because of the geography here and the fact that Ukraine had blown up all the bridges on the same river, which meant that keeping this area was already difficult for Russia, and they needed to put a lot of resources into stopping the Ukrainian forces here. Because if Ukraine manages to pass it and penetrate the Russian lines here and reach this road, Koronevo is basically fallen. So this area was very important, not necessarily because they absolutely had to go and take Koronevo, but just having this threat for Koronevo made the situation very difficult for Russia. Something happened, and as far as I know, whoever was in command of the defense here needs to get, they should probably not be in command of such a critical tactical situation ever again, because a column or 2 columns, I think, of Russian armed, basically armed assaults manages to pass on the road all the way down to Snagost and put all the Ukrainian forces in here in a terrible situation. And they got unhindered all the way up here, and they managed to arrive all the way to Snagost. Whether those vehicles are still exist, I don't think so, but they managed to put a lot of Russian forces down here as well. And apparently there's still fighting going on. The clarity of who's actually in control in all of these villages is still unclear. But Andrew marks it as under Russian control as of 2 days ago. Yeah. But then 2 days ago as well, we get messages that Ukraine has breached in at least 2 places, and the largest breach has been here, just south of Veseloye. So basically between what Ukraine already controlled and Tetkino, which is this place where Ukraine had an incursion last year as well. And apparently Ukraine has been probing here and also further north, putting the Russians into alert. This incursion here, or assault, opening up essentially a new front, is obviously to counter the fact that the Russians have taken control over some more area here and put this whole area under pressure. And as many know, there's been a lot of discussion about what is Ukraine going to do about this part of Glushkovo, which is on the southeastern part of the Sami River, which is now all the existing infrastructure, bridging infrastructure has been destroyed, but the Russians are constantly putting down pontoons. So all these red symbols are pontoons, and then these black ones are bridges. And now we have the answer. They're going up here. Unknown for now to what amount the Ukrainians have actually captured or is controlling here. But the Russians are definitely complaining about it on Telegram and saying, like, who the hell is in command there? Now we have all these troops trapped in between the Ukrainians. But we'll see. I think this is kind of a little bit of a desperation from Ukraine, because what happened here was very unfortunate. In my opinion, they should have never allowed this to happen. This could put the whole invasion into Kursk into danger, in my opinion. So, critical developments in the Kursk front. Not ideal, because Ukraine put a lot of effort and also is making a lot of putting a lot of emphasis on it in their diplomacy, that this is a major success, etc. So they really can't afford to have big issues here. Like, they need to stop this. They need to actually hit back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's all good analysis, man. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know Andrew had a lot of stuff to map today. He was very tired. We told him to go sleep. Don't be on the stream. So thank you for picking up the slack there and showing some of Andrew's updates for us and explaining what's going on. Okay, I don't think Erlend has audio right now. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the stream from there. Hopefully, you can hear me, right, Germany?
I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, just making sure it wasn't me. So yeah,
I was trying to trick him.
You-
When I was not
viewed it.
responding on purpose, and damn, Erlend.
I was starting to sweat a little bit because you didn't answer right away.
Yeah, just 1 second, because there was a question. I've noticed it like
right,
40 minutes
Q&A.
ago from Kellen. Yeah, Q&A. I don't know if if someone else had a question, but I saw a question from Kellen. I just want to answer. Showing on the screen to you. Do you think Scholz is now wanting UA to see, so Ukraine to see territory for peace, or is there's an icon over it? Sorry, or is this just a silly Western media clickbait? The problem with Scholz always is that he talks very weird. Like there was an interview just days ago where he said, we need to now seek peace faster. Basically, he was saying this than we are doing right now, which of course led to a lot of speculations. Where his spokesperson just a day later had to clarify. It's just they are working towards a peace, but they're not forcing peace on Ukraine. So he clarified it's all about a peace which with Ukraine can live for. Basically, Ukraine gets all of their territory back, all what they're wanting for. So the compensation of damage and the captured soldiers or in general the POWs need to return to Ukraine, all this kind of stuff. And only then that's when this is a peace which with which Ukraine can work for. This is what Scholz wants, basically. At least that's what what his spokespersons are saying. With Scholz personally speaking, it's always a bit. I definitely see where the media is getting this from. And I honestly can't rule out that Scholz would accept. He definitely would accept such a thing if Ukraine themselves propose it. He wouldn't say, "Hey, go on." He would definitely accept it very, very gladly. But proactive, I don't think Germany is in any position to actually tell Ukraine to cede this or that territory. In my opinion, honestly, the only country which actually can do it is the US, in my opinion, because they are providing the biggest share of military aid to Ukraine. Apart from that, no, Germany, no. It's unless Ukraine actually wants to, or the US also forcing Ukraine to do that, I don't think that would happen. No, even if Scholz wants to.
And then we just had one other question from Kellen, which kind of dovetails into this, which is like, do you think I think maybe I'll rephrase the question to be like, what are the circumstances where the US would cut off, like would issue some kind of threat or warning to Ukraine, like, we're going to cut this off? I personally, I don't know. I don't even think I would want to speculate. It's just like maybe too much of a speculative thing. I don't know. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that?
No, not from my side. That's yeah, no, too speculated.
Yeah, but I think it's true. I think Kellen's right that like it would take a lot for that to happen. I don't think it would be that the U.S. would do that lightly. So I think that's probably the case. So yeah, any other questions that I missed?
At the end, I believe one for Erlend.
Yeah. So if the Nordic minister mentioned the possibility of closing the straits, no, but I know that Denmark has like officially banned Russian ships from entering harbor or going to port, and they also reserved their rights to board vessels passing in the straits. So this Kattegat Strait here is very important for Russia because they need to be able to reach their harbors in Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg. And because of the law of the seas, even if they actually have to pass into Danish and Swedish territory, maybe even Norwegian here, they have the right to passage even with warships and whatever commercial ships they want. So they can pass either under the bridge or over the tunnel between Denmark and Sweden here, even if it's actually inside territorial waters of Denmark and Sweden. So yeah, it's a problematic thing because it would, according to some interpretation of international law, can be seen as a declaration of war. So I think that's kind of far from reality, to be fair. Even though I would like to see it happen, I don't think it's going to happen.
It needs like a Montreux Convention, right? That seems to be what's helping in the Black Sea, where like Denmark just says, we're not going to let anyone's warships from any countries in. We're talking about Russia. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing is that such an international treaty would only be able to achieve with the total surrender of Russia after an armed conflict, right?
True. Yeah.
So,
like the Montreux Convention was agreed to by Russia, you're saying, and we would need a similar situation with this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
but it's NATO Lake now, no question.
The thing is, they're in a horrible situation here.
Yeah.
We could strangle them very easily.
They're cooked in the Baltic.
That's also one of the reasons why the fear of the use of the Russian nuclear weapons have been quite high in Finland, Sweden, and the surrounding countries, because they have this very, very horrible situation where they have to pass through the straits between Norway and Denmark and Sweden. They kind of have the same situation up here. You can't really see it on the map very well, but a lot of these seas are not easily passed in winter because of the ice. So their main fleet, which is here in Murmansk, are kind of pinpointed by NATO also here.
Yep. If I was Russia, I would be a little scared that you guys just had a giant televised conference about what to do with me.
Yeah.
Some of the only countries in Europe that take military spending seriously, they don't have the actual personnel numbers, but it's a very significant strategic area, I would say, for Russia, and they're pretty cooked up there. So, any other? I think that's pretty much it, huh?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap it there. Thanks everyone for tuning in this week. Appreciate it. We had a lot of various bits of news to cover. Oh, go ahead, Erlend.